See.
Perfect.
So we might as well get started then. So hello everyone who is tuned in. We've got Cindy, we've got Facebook user, which I don't know who you are, unfortunately. Tahir, how's it going? I'm joined by the one and only Shanna Mann of Central Virginia Prep. How are you doing, Shanna?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming along. And it's early morning for you, so I appreciate you spending the time on Sunday. So I thought we might as well get straight into talking about prep services and the process just right from the start, because some people won't have a clue what prep service even is. So if you would like to take it away, that would be amazing.
Okay, so we're kind of a middleman between you and Amazon. Amazon has a ton of rules about how things need to be packaged and processed for their warehouses, which has a lot of robots. So we have to do things a certain way to make sure the robots are happy. And because we do it so often, it's much less of a learning curve for our clients to have somebody who knows exactly what the prep is for various things and how things are graded. So we basically provide a service where especially for the booksellers, we will collect inventory that comes in small packages until you have enough to make it worth shipping into an Amazon fulfillment center. And we will also do any prep that's necessary, and we will list if you want us to. So there's a few different things. We can't take everything off your hands. We do from time to time get people who are like, I want to run this 100% automated, do everything for me. And it's like, not really our bailiwick, but we can do 3 things for you. And they're quite time consuming. And obviously if you're overseas, you can't do them at all. So that's where we come in.
Yeah, I mean, you do most of it. I see it as near enough automated as far as I'm concerned. Great service.
I think some people want us to reprice, not initially. So that's one thing is people always want us to set their prices for them.
Yeah.
Or for instance, they'll give us a list of the prices that they want to sell the books at. There's 2 problems with that. The first is that by the time we ship them out of here, prices have probably already fluctuated. And the second problem with that is by the time they get to Amazon, prices have probably fluctuated again. So we just price them high, and when they go live, then you reprice them. Don't get them in there and then find out that you drastically underpriced things because the market shifted.
Yeah, exactly. So you usually price them at $199.99, right?
Yes.
So
for a while, that was the threshold to not get the Amazon pricing error. But I don't think that threshold really exists anymore. It was good enough, so we never changed it. It's quite rare that you sell a book for $200.
Yeah, it's happened only a couple of times to me where unfortunately I've forgotten about having a book that was worth more than 200, and then it sold for 200, and it was probably could have got 400 for it. So I was pretty gutted about that. But as you say, it doesn't happen very often. Right. So it's something that I just note down now, because as you say, that if you do put the ceiling as say $299, sometimes you'll get the stranded inventory issue with books that are only worth say $50. So I think that's definitely the best way of doing it. So in terms of one of the questions was costs for your service. So I don't know if you want to run through that in terms of listing and grading stuff.
Yeah, so book prep is $1.50 a book because of the inspection and the single nature of the books. Even when you get a bunch, say you bought 10 of a chemistry textbook, we still have to physically examine all of them and grade them individually. So there's no labor savings for us, and therefore there's no cost savings like there is for new inventory. So if you send me 200 of a dog toy, then there's a cost savings, obviously. But if you send me 200 of a used book, I still have to look at each of those individually. So it's $1.50 for book prep, which includes the receiving, inspection, 4 weeks of storage, and the label prep, and when we ship it out, and the boxes and dunnage as well. So it's kind of an all-encompassing price there. And then additionally, for an extra 50 cents per item, we'll list for you. And for people who are just getting started on Amazon, that's basically why we started listing, because learning to list on Amazon is quite a learning curve.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, definitely.
what we do find is that eventually people start wanting to have like more rich data in their SKUs and things like that. They'll put like buy costs and things like that, stuff that we can't do. So we do find that eventually a lot of sellers take it over and then just send us completed shipments for packaging.
Right. So in terms of listing, I never really saw the. Yeah, I just thought it makes so much more sense for you guys to do it for me.
Well, for you specifically, you have such a robust like spreadsheet setup, and I think that the people who do their own listing will use something like Excelerlist,
Right.
which is cloud-based and a subscription model. And when you're listing in an Excelerlist, certain things are easier, like recording the pricing at the time, whereas you, I think, either do it at the time or after the fact when we list and plug it into your spreadsheets. And then
Yeah.
you've basically taken on the manual part at a different part of your process. And
Yeah. In terms of
it's beneficial for you specifically because you do so much volume that we don't have to, like, there's a lag between the time that the typical seller like creates a shipment, lists all their inventory, and then like we are able to get it through our queue to prep. So for some people that's like a 2-day lag or something. And for you, like sometimes all your books come in. Well, actually we do this for you because you're such high volume. People, I will not do this for you until you have a proven track record of being organized and on top of things like Seth. So Seth does a lot of volume, and every Wednesday and every Saturday after the check-ins are done, we ship him because he's just got so much crap here. So
sorry about that.
no, not a problem, because it's just easier for us to like give you your own table and check everything in, and then rather than drag it 3 cartloads back to Stowe, we'll just leave it there and we'll put it in boxes and ship it out the next day. So we do that for the like higher volume people, where if they're really consistent and really on top of things, and they aren't likely to be like, why did you ship that thing? Then we'll just like take over certain aspects because we know you're cool. But it's a trust issue, people. You will get there.
Yeah, for the record, for anyone watching, so what used to happen before I was so high volume, I would send an email to you guys at the office email address asking you to send a shipment in when I felt that there was enough for me. Because obviously, if you're only buying, say, a few books a day, you've got to really think about the costs of shipping in, because you want to save on your margins. Really, you don't want to just send 10 books in, right? You want to send at least 50. That was, I think that's what I specified. It was like at least 50 so that it makes it worth it, right?
Yeah, and like you already posted in this in Facebook, so I don't feel bad saying it, but you mentioned that you buy at least 35 books a day, and I would say, yeah, at least. So,
at least, yeah. Conservatively.
We just ship you whenever your slot gets full. But normally what happens for what I would call like the middle of the pack sellers is they'll buy more like 35 or 50 books a week. Usually they can ship once every week or once every 2 weeks once they really get their feet under them. And that's the pretty typical velocity for our booksellers. So they're buying books, 2 or 3 or 6 or 10 come in a day, and then they'll get like in the habit of, a lot of people will like, I guess, do their business on the weekends, and Monday morning will come into a whole raft of people who are ordering shipments, or they'll like just keep an eye on their spreadsheet and like ship, as you say, when they've got a certain number. And other people do it so if they buy, say, 40 books and then they wait until they're all in and then they'll ship them. So it kind of just depends on your personal philosophy, your organizational system, and to a certain extent, the time of year. So like right now, people are fine with waiting until that one last book shows up. But like in January, they will not be fine with this.
Yeah. I'd just say my advice would be, probably at least 35 books.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what my minimum would be. Obviously, the more the better. But
that is twofold. So one is that if you've got like 25 books or less, Amazon has a distinct tendency to split your shipment up to 2 or 3 weeks. You probably don't even remember this, but that is a thing that happens with the people who are just getting started. Is they'll almost double their shipping costs because Amazon will send one to North Carolina and one to New Jersey and maybe one out to Texas, and it's super annoying just from a shipping cost perspective. So that's why I really strongly urge people to get 40 books because especially with the textbooks, that's like a £100 shipment, and that's when you start to see the price breaks in the shipping cost. So what happens is just UPS in general has like a threshold where there's like a flat rate. This package, no matter what size, costs this much, and then there's a price per pound on that. And we don't know what it is because Amazon negotiated those deals in private. But what I do know is that when a shipment it gets to be like £100 or so, or about 40 books because textbooks are heavy, then the price per book gets to about $1 a book or a little more, and it never goes down from there pretty well. So
okay, so that's the sweet spot,
right?
So we were talking about this just before we went live. One of my main concerns when I started with books was in the UK, shipping's obviously a lot quicker because it's a tiny country. So I was worried when I saw the shipping estimates that it would take 7 to 14 days to get to you guys. And then you guys are we've got to wait for my books. Then you've got to ship them off. Then they've got to go to Amazon. And I was concerned that my inventory turn rate was going to suffer compared to doing business in the UK. So I didn't know if you wanted to kind of run through the time spans a bit more.
Okay, so in the United States, they have a certain class of mail called media mail, and that's what almost all the book shippers use, especially like every non-prime book shipper, for the most part, will use this. And media mail is a class of mail that is basically the slow boat for mail. So first the letter mail goes in terms of priority on the trucks. The USPS trucks. Letter mail is first and foremost, and then package mail, like the first class shipping packages. And then finally, if there's room, they'll do the media mail. That's why they tell you that it might take a long time, because if anything's getting kicked off the truck, it's going to be the media mail. But usually it's not that bad. It's like some people will see books in here in 2 days after ordering. So, especially because Virginia is pretty centrally located. So it's like 2 days to Florida and 2 days to Maine and like maybe 3 days to California. So, like the whole Eastern Seaboard is pretty accessible to us. But yeah, in rare cases, it can take like 7 to 10 days. Things get lost. So actually, I'll take the opportunity to walk you through the whole time scale, because I think people are fooled by the fact that Amazon offers 2-day shipping. They think that like that means that 2 days to Amazon is also a thing. But what actually happens is Amazon has this big machinery of fulfillment that allows things to get to people at 2 days, which means that the behind the scenes work is very complex. So you buy the book from like Egg Books or whatever, and it gets shipped here. It's here 3 days. But even if you bought all 40 books at once, you got to give it at least a week, probably 10 days before everything comes in. And even then you might lose some stuff. Then you book a shipment by emailing the office and say, create my shipment, or you create it yourself. That's going to slow you down. And then we have 2 days to create it, not counting weekends. Then it goes on a USPS truck. And those guys are fast. We mostly ship to Charlotte, North Carolina for, I would say, like 95% of our shipments. And that gets there in 2 to 3 days. So from, let's see, that's 10 days plus 2 days plus 3 days to arrive at an Amazon fulfillment center in North Carolina. And that's when people start to get antsy because their tracking number on the back end shows delivered. But that is not a fulfillment center. That is a clearinghouse where Amazon unboxes all of the crap that they received on the truck that morning, scans it into their inventory system, and then divvies it out to send it to one of the 100 other warehouses around the country. So sometimes they will take the whole, because we provide box contents, sometimes they will take the whole box and they'll ship it to Chattanooga or whatever. Chattanooga being in Tennessee, which is right in the center of the country. And sometimes they will like unbox things and they'll split it up. And it just depends. It's a very complex algorithm that allows them to determine where the demand is most likely to be, so that the item in question goes to the warehouse nearest its probable buyer. That's how they get the 2-day shipping. Now, normally, from the time that it gets checked in Charlotte to the time that it's available for sale, in non-COVID times was like a week, 10 days, you know, for the bulk, especially for the bulk of your stuff. But right now, so we're seeing stuff sit on the dock. Not all of it, not even like most of it, but like occasionally we'll see a tracking number basically not get checked in for weeks, like 4 weeks. And so that's why I was eager to talk to you today, so that people understood that, like, for stuff going to sell in January, be shipping now. Normal deadlines to have stuff for sale January 1st is like December 10th. Now I would say Thanksgiving is like almost too late. But the thing is that January 1st would obviously be ideal, but you're selling all throughout January and some of February.
Exactly, yeah.
Don't psych yourself out and stop shipping. Just like be aware that in retail, you've got to have this really long lead time. Like in August, while I was still shipping all you guys for the August textbook season, people started dumping container loads on me for Q4 sales. Like, that's the lead time we're talking about. So,
yes. So wait, when is Thanksgiving the 4th of December?
Pardon?
Is it, when's Thanksgiving?
Oh, right. Sorry. So Thanksgiving is the Thursday after this one.
Okay. So, okay, yeah. So it's good that you said that. So I was actually just before this call talking to a seller who does more than me. And so he's quite a high volume seller, and he said that his cut-off time for buying is probably going to be the 1st of December.
Right.
So that gives you a bit of an idea. I'd probably agree with that. Or Thanksgiving makes more sense. I also did a Facebook post on this a couple of weeks ago saying you really want to start ramping up your buys now, and like really try and motor through up until the next couple of weeks, because that is a problem with shipments. I mean, some of my books, say sometimes from September, are only just becoming live,
right? Just
because Amazon obviously got so many problems associated. So I think I'd just like to say that obviously you've got to factor that in, but also don't let it stress you out.
Agreed.
As long as you keep sending books in, just don't look at your managed shipments part of Seller Central, because it's just going to stress you out. If you just focus on buying more books, sending them in, it will work itself out. And obviously you aren't in control of a lot of these issues that Amazon are having. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, and also wanted to say, if anyone's kind of tentative about getting into book arbitrage and using a prep service, in terms of the lead times being too long, even with the COVID issues and stuff, I'm still getting my books in pretty fast, the majority of them.
Right.
It's not like like maybe even the vast majority. It's just there's a few lagging behind, and I think some people get hung up on these few laggards, but the majority is absolutely fine for me anyway, and I think for most sellers. But
absolutely. And I the only reason I want to bring it up is because I'll get the emails about this, because people will be like, something happened, my stuff isn't there yet, and it's like, nothing happened, I promise. If the tracking number marks delivered, like, they're getting to it.
Yeah, that's all as well. I look at it. It's, it says delivered. unless
Right.
Amazon have specifically told you that they've lost your books. You're just in the queue, aren't you? So
Right. And that's the thing is, I think I don't have any evidence of this because I've never gotten to tour an Amazon warehouse, but I wouldn't be surprised if the truck gets unloaded, stuff gets piled on the dock, and then they try to clear it all off, and then another truck comes. And if they didn't get all of the way through that first pile, it just gets piled on top of.
yeah, I don't know if you've read the Everything Store book.
I have not.
That's just a kind of a history of Amazon from start to finish in quite a relatively small book, and it talks about the work they had to go into in terms of the infrastructure and the logistics to build those fulfillment centers. Right. And it sounds like it's very much organized chaos.
Oh yeah.
So
everywhere.
Obviously they've done a fantastic job, but it was almost an impossible job. Right. From like an engineering standpoint. They had to get some genius into to work it all out. So you can't expect everything to work incredibly well when you're building the biggest system ever created, right? In terms of fulfillment.
Incredibly complex, not just from like an actual like moving boxes around perspective, but the software that tells you where to move the boxes and where the boxes are stored and everything like that. Like I would kill to have Amazon's system. Like a warehouse software system that works really well is worth its weight in gold. But like you know, it was a very expensive, like Amazon didn't make money for 20 years because they were pouring money into the infrastructure that allowed this to happen. So yeah. I really geek out about supply chain stuff. I realize it's not super interesting to most people.
I find it quite interesting. Maybe it's just book people.
Maybe.
So you mentioned, we had a question about storage. You mentioned the 4-week storage. I think someone in the group asked about whether you'd hold stock. So it is just a 4-week limit kind of you.
Well, it's 4 weeks. So we've got our warehouse set up so that the people who turn over inventory are in like a closer section of the warehouse, and the people who don't are in a further section of the warehouse. So if you leave your stuff with me for too long, we move you into the further section of the warehouse and we charge you for storage. That being said, I don't recommend that book people hold their books with me rather than with Amazon, because my fees for storage are pretty much the same as Amazon's fees for storage, barring the long-term storage fee. And you don't have the opportunity to potentially sell any of it with me. So a lot of people think that the high seasons are the only time that they'll sell books, and that's completely false. You might as well just have them in at Amazon and price them, like maybe dial back on your repricing, but at least there they have the opportunity to make you money, whereas with me they're just dead weight.
Yeah, so totally agree. And you don't know when as you say, you don't know when a book someone's just going to snap it up, right? Even if it's really high rank and keepers telling you that it's not going to sell. I have some of those in there, and they do go. I mean,
it's just a numbers game, really.
Exactly, and also I think people seem to get a bit hung up on the storage costs. And I don't think they're particularly high at all, really, in terms of what the market you're opening yourselves up to. I think they're really low. I think I had a question in the Facebook group asking about what they do, what I do, what other people do with books that have been in the inventory more than 90 days. And I just said, you really don't need to worry about it until you get to over a year, right? Because that's when the long-term storage fees kick in. I think it only goes up a tiny bit when you're over 90 days. I think that's what it is. But either way, I don't think it's something that should stop you from picking longer tail books.
Agreed. The only thing is that, like, right now, so starting in August, Amazon started doing inventory restrictions where you can ship anything as long as you don't have too much of one thing. And that nailed a lot of people on the retail side of things, where if they're selling merchandise that isn't books, the new merchandise, they were getting like container loads of stuff being shipped from China, and they were storing the whole container at Amazon. And Amazon was like, nope, nothing more than, I think, 30 days or 90 days, depending on velocity.
Oh, okay.
But I have noticed that few of the book people seem to be affected by that. Like, I guess Amazon will allow 200 people to sell the same book, but not 200 of the same book. So that's been really interesting. I haven't seen anybody get caught with that, but I think if you wanted to get into it might be a problem if you got like, don't quote me on this. This is just something out of the dead books pile, but this is a very common first year chemistry textbook. Chemistry being one of the freshmen, being one of the classes that are almost everybody's required to take, right? So there's a lot of different chemistry textbooks, but there's also a lot of students buying them. And so sometimes we'll have people who buy like 10 of them because it's a high velocity book, most likely. And then they are only allowed to send in 6 of them. So sometimes that can bite you. But I really don't.
Sorry, I was going to say that must depend on your sales figures, right? Because I sometimes send in over 10 books, and I don't think I've ever had that problem, right?
It's a combination. Yes, sometimes it is seller score. I forget what they call it, IPI.
The IPI, yeah.
Yeah. So partially it's seller score and partially it's the sales velocity of the book. So if you wanted to send in 10 of a long tail item, you would probably have difficulty. And if your IPI was under 400, 500 now, that's right.
Yeah.
Then they'll kind of try to like throttle you in a little bit. But that's the thing is, if you want to improve your IPI score, you don't do the long tail books, do the high velocity books, because that will improve your IPI score, among others.
Exactly.
But like, I think that's the biggest one.
Yeah, I think I kind of advise you want to be targeting the faster sellers and only have a small portion of your inventory being the longer tail, even if you're only buying them for a few dollars, because you don't want your IPI score going below 500 really, because you don't want those limits. And
people really freaked out about the storage limits that were apparently levied on the people with the sub 500 IPI score. But I've only seen a couple of clients get burned by the storage limits. Mostly it's the like trying to send multiples thing that I see more often. And even that, like I don't really see that more often. It turns out that everybody was freaking out over pretty much nothing, like they always do when Amazon announced a big new change.
Yeah, there's always a big hoo-ha about that. I try to stay out of it. On that sort of note, on that train of thought, should we talk about stranded inventory then? Because we wanted to just say, I don't know if you want to kick things off.
Okay, so first of all, Seller Central has, so as Seth was saying about how the whole system of Amazon is basically organized chaos, Seller Central is like the program that sits on top of the organized chaos, and it is just held together with bubblegum and baling twine. Like I think everybody's used to like retail programs that are like slick and sophisticated and user-friendly, and Seller Central is 100% not that. But it's still better than Walmart, so count your blessings. Okay. So Seller Central has this thing where they've got a few different things, but the one you're going to run into the most is the stranded inventory. And for a long time, stranded inventory was like barely a thing. Initially, stranded inventory was like, this item lost its label, and we can't print a label off because we're not 100% sure what label to print off. So it was like a thing where you would just like put in a ticket and be like, this title goes with this label, could you please? Or you would just set up a removal order and we would do it for you. Then Amazon improved the screen where they showed your stranded inventory, and it became like a catch-all of error messages. And worst of all, the error messages like don't mean a thing. They mean nothing. Worst of all is the one where it's like the listing error. That doesn't mean anything.
No. Yeah, the weird one that happened a few months ago. It seems to have stopped now, but the listing just disappeared, and you had to do this weird workaround where you had to change the FBA, say that you didn't have any books. So change it to merchant fulfilled, put your book, and then you had to change it to FBA, and it was just this long, drawn-out process to change a few lists. I'm like,
So stranded inventory is kind of like the bug catcher, where I think Amazon changes some things in their back end and it causes some problems, and they all get showed up in the stranded inventory page. And whenever somebody's like, how do I fix the stranded inventory? And it's like, it's hard to say whether there's anything wrong at all, but
Yeah.
I recommend that if it persists for more than 2 days, like get active in like a seller forum on Facebook or something, because the bugs that they're catching are always changing, and therefore the ways to fix them are always changing. And you can also put in a ticket with Seller Central, but that's usually quite useless.
Yeah.
I mean, I recommend it just so that you can kind of get a feel for how Seller Central help works.
Yeah, that's its own skill set in itself, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Working with the associates, I find that it's good to just raise cases just so you realise what you're dealing with.
Right.
The one good thing is they get back to you quickly, which
yes.
is good, but you might have to go over the same issue 5 or 10 times. But...
Right. So the secret to that is, I found this out that so from the some of the Amazon consultants. So the tier 1 Seller Central support is not allowed to do anything but paste snippets in. They cannot explain anything in their own words, because I guess Amazon assumes that they'll screw it up. Which, to be fair, Seller Central is extremely complex, and there are a lot of facets. And books, especially, are they're like the redheaded stepchild of Amazon. If Amazon hadn't started in books, guaranteed they would not be doing books now, especially used books, because it's very much its own beast. That's why Walmart doesn't do books. Target doesn't do books. It's very different. So anyways, the tier 1 seller support cannot tell you anything that doesn't exist in a help desk file somewhere. So if you're getting the whole robotic response thing, it's probably because they don't have a suitable response, and you have to escalate. And you have to escalate until the point that you get somebody who is apparently trusted and trained enough to be able to use their own words.
Right. Yeah, because otherwise it's just a cookie cutter solution that you've got to try and work around. But as you said, the best thing to do, other than Seller Central, is just hang out in Facebook groups, because there will be someone more intelligent than you, or more dogged,
or just in terms of before.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the best advice to give, and we just want to show viewers that the stranded inventory it's not your problem.
No,
it's nothing. You can't do anything about it. If people want to email Jeff Bezos about it, they can, but
I think
right
now what happened was, I think, so I've heard of a few different versions of this, but what I personally saw happen was that when COVID hit, first of all, Amazon shut down for 3 weeks. I don't know. I think you guys are mostly all British or European. Okay. Well, anyways, I've seen a lot of people spell center CRE, so that's why I'm extrapolating.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So in March, Amazon just shut down incoming shipments for 3 weeks, which was a bold move on their part, because they basically only have 3 weeks of inventory for most stuff. And so they basically were selling out their shelves so that they could get merchandise to sellers. And then after that, they were like, okay, we need to get stuff in the pipeline faster. So they tried to get incoming inventory into the for sale pipeline by putting it active before it was like technically checked in where it was supposed to be. And then they accidentally oversold themselves a lot of the time, or they lost inventory in flux. And then I started to see a lot of strandings. And a lot of people told me that Amazon was trying to make it so that items could be sold while they were still on the truck. But what I saw was the opposite direction, is that they're stranding items so that they won't get sold off the truck. And I think probably they've improved their program that allows them to do that. But even so, stuff will get checked in on Amazon and immediately go stranded, or sometimes not even get to Amazon yet. And then from what I hear, after a couple of days, they stop being stranded. So that used to say reserved inventory on your manage inventory page. There's like a little quantity number, and if you mouse over it, it tells you exactly what stage the item is in. I don't know if that's still intact. I think everything's just going stranded right now, but that's what I saw happen, is that Amazon kind of kind of tried to improve their throughput, and in doing so kind of spoked their own wheel.
Yeah, it's not. And another issue with Stranded at the moment is that there's a lot more price alerts happening.
Oh yeah.
So that was a massive problem last year, and I had so many books which I constantly couldn't add to my listing, even though I was pricing them within the market. So I've got a lot more of those at the moment, and I don't know what the issue is with that. I haven't really looked into it enough.
I've seen that be seasonal, like a few times a year. I feel like Amazon tweaks whatever algorithm that they use to determine whether something is high priced, and then it throws a bunch of errors for 6 weeks, and then I guess they calm it down and dial it back. Like a surprising amount for a $1 trillion corporation. A lot of it is just throwing stuff at the wall, hoping you don't break anything too much, and then dialing it back and fixing the problems as they emerge. So
yeah, I mean,
people are under the impression that they're dealing with professionals here, but like there's a certain amount of madness involved.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like what I said earlier, it's the organized chaos, isn't it? It's working, but there's just a lot of moving parts that don't necessarily work all in unison, and you can't really expect the $1 trillion company to have everything that's working amazingly well. But so, yeah, we just want to underpin that there are always going to be problems, and you need to not get too hung up on them or stressed out about them. I usually just, unless the problem persists for quite a long time, I choose to ignore until it becomes something that's actually affecting my business seriously, and usually it doesn't, right? So should we do a couple of questions that we had?
Sure.
So, you wanted to talk about tracking numbers. Did we go over that, or do you want to repeat the tracking numbers?
The tracking numbers. So the problem with tracking numbers is that they get scanned, but like there's nothing that requires them to be scanned at the right place. So we get like 3 or 4 wrong deliveries a week where it's just somebody else's stuff is in our tubs. And obviously that tracking number is marked delivered. It just didn't get delivered to the right spot. So the easiest way for you as a client of ours to track this down is in your spreadsheet with us. We use Google Sheets, which has version history. So if you just go into your version history back to the day when the tracking number was marked delivered and search the last 4 digits of that tracking number, and Google Sheets will do this thing where it just highlights the row that somebody changed. So there's usually only like, 5 highlights a day. So you just go in there and like check the last 4 digits of the tracking number. The whole tracking number is too unwieldy, and there's some complications with prefixes that are sometimes there and sometimes not. But if you just look for the last 4, I've never had that fail me, to see if it was delivered that day or the day after, because sometimes we'll get a late truck and they won't all get checked in. And generally you can find it that way. And if you can't, then email the office and we'll have another look for it. But that's usually what happens, is it just either there was like some sort of recording error where like you put 2 copies of that book like when you were recording your orders, or something else happened. We just call it spreadsheet gremlins, but almost always it's accurate. And then like 1 time in 30, the book is actually lost and was never delivered here.
Yeah, it definitely happens a little bit, but yeah, as you say, 1 in 30 is probably about right. Yeah, but you're always going to lose a book or 2, aren't you? It's the way it is. The mail service is never going to be perfect. So.
Yeah, and like physical inventory is not the same as like running a software company. Like physical goods, just like they're hard to track.
Yeah, but I think it comes. You kind of get good karma. So if you lose a book, I've sometimes had books come in, and the bookseller has actually sent me a book that's worth more than the one I ordered. Which, that's quite nice when you have that. But
that's the other thing that comes is that you'll get somebody else's title. So it would be like they just chose the wrong like chemistry textbook or whatever, and you got a different book which we entered onto your spreadsheet under that correct tracking number, and you're just like, well, but I was expecting this other one, and it never came in, and that's what happened. Yeah,
it doesn't happen too much again. It's just a few books out of 30 or whatever. You mentioned, you got some props in terms of grading? We should probably talk about grading.
Yes,
Of
everybody
books.
wants to know about grading. So let's see.
Hot topic.
Oh my goodness. I thought. Oh well.
I want to say that you guys do a phenomenal job of the grading, because I rarely ever have a problem in terms of negative feedback in terms of the grading of a book. I think the only times I've ever had a problem is when a customer has bought a book and probably treated it terribly and then returned it, and then that's gone back in and it's been resold, and then I've had a negative feedback from that. But yeah, I just want to say that you guys definitely do a great job on the grading front. So this is going to be prime info.
Well, so that's the thing is, like, because we're doing our own, we're doing grading for books that we don't own. We don't have that like ownership bias, because I think that's the problem for a lot of as the very smallest sellers, is they're like, well, you just sort of like kind of grow attached to your own books, and you think highly of them. But we're from the perspective of the buyer. They have certain expectations when they buy things, and from seeing the complaints over the years, we're clear on the sort of like the things that are most likely to trigger. Like, for instance, I got this book here. It's like there's technically nothing wrong with it, but this kind of curl makes people mad.
Yeah.
So we would mark that as acceptable, not because there's any water damage. I think it was maybe just humidity or something. There's like maybe a slight amount of
tiny bit. Yeah.
But I think it was just humidity, which in the American South is just sort of a thing you deal with. So that's what we would mark that as acceptable, just because somebody's going to get that book and they're going to be like, You could sell it, and it was sent to us as G, but like,
it's not worth the risk, is it?
No, in my opinion, no, especially because a lot of our sellers are newbies and they don't have a lot of feedback, and they can't risk a bad review, because you get one bad review and it's very difficult, because in my experience, at least from people asking me how they get reviews, college students don't leave reviews. Like,
no,
they just don't. They're not even worth it. So like, it's very difficult for textbook sellers to get reviews.
It's incredibly difficult. I've sold thousands of books, and I've still only got just over 150 emails. So, and I use an email campaign, an autoresponder that sends emails to all the people buying them. So obviously I've got all those emails going out, and I still only, the uptakes, way less than 5%, Yeah. So I mean, it's less than 1%, I think.
I was gonna say that sounds
less than 1%. Yeah.
Right. And like, typically speaking, if people are motivated to leave a review, it's a bad one. So like,
exactly, yeah.
So
it's
anyway,
frustrating, but I would also like to say that it's way better to send in a used acceptable book. I think people don't realise that people buy acceptable books. There's plenty of students who aren't bothered about buying the acceptable.
The cheapest one.
Yeah, exactly. And usually, because you guys are not sending, you warn me when something's particularly bad, damage, right? And I usually say just bin it, because I don't want to risk the bad feedback. So usually the customer's actually going to be happier. So you've kind of under-promised and over-delivered, right?
Right.
That's the way I see it.
I had difficulty finding like a true acceptable so I didn't take these out of client stashes. What we call the homeless books pile, which is where clients send us stuff that didn't have their name on it, and nobody ever claimed it. So we just kind of hold on to it for 3 months, and then we'd bin it. But I found when they're really bad condition, they just go straight into the bin typically. So I found it difficult to find anything with like a broken spine or really poor condition to even show you. Like, I found this one, which is got a tiny tear here at the cover.
Yeah.
But because the spine is otherwise quite strong and there are no markings in it, I would probably still send it G. But keep in mind.
Sorry, and you would just comment. You'd put in the listing that there is a small
torn cover, like something like that. I would still, but keep in mind that the problem is not the book as they are in our hands. The problem is that we're going to ship it to Amazon. Amazon's going to toss it in a tub. It might move tubs several times, and then they're going to toss it in a box to ship it to the customer. And they're not going to be gentle with it at any point in that process. So we can expect that anything we send is probably going to get dinged up as time goes on. And we want to keep that in mind, that if it's barely good right now, we should keep in mind that it might be very well be acceptable, 2 months down the line when it sells. But this one is otherwise, like, it's got a very unscuffed cover. There's very little chipping around the edges. So I still think that would be fine as a G.
But yeah, so in terms of books that you wouldn't send in, or you would advise us not to send in, that's kind of super torn pages, broken spine, missing pages, because that's against Amazon terms of service, right? And then if the water damage is just way too much.
Water damage is an automatic acceptable.
Oh, smell as well. Smell.
Yes. I have such a nose for mildew. It's terrible. Like, if I get a headache as I walk past a book, I'm like, that one, kill it with fire. So yeah, the other thing is, like, extensive highlighting is an automatic acceptable. Let's see, I got one here. I'm sure I brought one. This one.
Oh yeah, highlighting. Yeah, I forgot about that.
This is a very nice copy. Very flat, shiny, no stickers. And yet you open it up and it's got a bunch of writing in it in pencil, so it won't show up on the video screen, I'm pretty sure. See if there's any highlighting. So, whoops, my camera is reversed.
Right.
So then that's an automatic good, an automatic downgrade to good.
So in terms of highlighting, what percentage of the book needs to be highlighted for it to go from a good to an acceptable?
Like,
got quite a lot, right?
Quite a lot. Like,
if
mostly highlighting. Or if it's like heavy annotations, like we have like a sliding scale for writing. We have light, medium, heavy. Oh yeah, and unmarked. I was like, there's got to be 4 of them. So unmarked is the one that's so a VG one does not have any writing in it whatsoever, except potentially like a name on the inside of the cover.
Right. So, yeah, VG's kind of almost new generally. Like, it's almost like a new book kind of.
Right, exactly. And that getting into what people expect, like a new book, we try to encourage people not to sell those, because when people buy like new, they expect new. They just don't want to pay for new. And so I find that those cheap bastards are the worst for complaints.
Yeah, there's no point either. There's no point. You might as well just make it VG.
Make it VG, and then somebody who's like, oh, well, I'd like to pay for a little bit of quality so that I can actually read it. Then they get a really fine condition book, and then they're quite happy. They probably still won't give you a review, but they'll at least be happy. So
but also, in terms of the amount of key paragraphs that I've looked at, in terms of the difference between average price of VG to like new, is just so minimal. I don't think it's ever worth getting hung up on it. Yeah.
Not in textbooks. I think you could make an argument for like certain types of
or like comics or something, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ones that people gift, potentially. You might be able to make the argument that that if they were like nice enough condition to give to people, then you could get a markup. But I agree. I don't think it's enough of a markup. I don't think that people are giving that many books. So
yeah.
So this is, I would say, like a prototypical, where's my count? VG book where it's got stickers. And I also particularly like that it's got the Cengage barcode on it. And that's something that they started, especially with their whole like crackdown on counterfeits. I mean, I'm not really sure why you couldn't counterfeit this sticker, but I like it because it gives it a gloss of legitimacy. And there's no marking in this. All the pages are flat and straight. And sometimes we'll get something like this listed as good, and we'll just upgrade it because it's in very nice condition. I will compare it to this one, which I would call good because, sorry, my camera keeps moving.
No, it's fine. We can see it.
This is also fairly low on the sticker, but you can see it's been around the block a time or two. It's got some chips. It's got some scuffs. Maybe you can't see it, but like the cover's not quite as shiny.
Right.
And the binding is just a little bit,
Oh, a bit loose, yeah.
yeah, a little bit loose. Like you can tell the book has been used before, whereas that one, it didn't look like it had been really used at all. You can feel the difference between a book that's been cracked a lot and one that hasn't. So that's what we would call G. And the thing about the G category is it's quite large, like quite broad. A lot of things fall under it. Like for instance, this is a Norton. They sell quite a lot of this. And there's no chipping at the top. There's no curling at the corners, which is in very nice condition. But just because it does this, I might downgrade it to G. And I might not, depending on like if somebody had more of these copies and they were the other ones were in like the chippy condition, I might sell this as VG, because when my people go to label them, they would be able to look at this book and be like, obviously this is the VG one.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of people ask about stickers, that they're worried about buying books with stickers. I always advise that that's not too much of an issue, is it?
The only sticker you need to worry about is something like this, because these cover the words Instructor's Edition every time. Same thing.
We hate Instructor's Editions. I get sent a lot of Instructor's Editions. It's very, very irritating. It's something you've just got to...
They also do this one, which is a black sticker. Used book definitely covers an Instructor's Edition. You can tell because the formatting is a little bit different on this. It's got the blue.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously, if you guys have never seen the book, you don't really know what to look for. And there are like companies that will buy from the publisher these former Instructor's Editions, and they'll tape them all up. It's very pretty. It's a very professional job. But it's still an Instructor's Edition, and the reason you know this is because if you try to trade this book in, the buyback sites won't take it. They will tell you, oh no, this is an Instructor's Edition, it has no value. Well, but like as a kid in college, you bought this book as a used book, probably from those very same buyback sites who... most likely refused to pay for the book and were told to bin it and just decided to resell it anyway. So that is my biggest source of returns.
Yeah, and, they annoy me.
Yeah, right?
A lot. There's so many around. I guess on that same topic, you mentioned counterfeits. We should probably talk about counterfeits.
Right. So I didn't find any counterfeits to show you. The worst ones are the Indian editions, or what they call the overseas editions or the global editions. They go by a few different names. And what happens is Americans have a lot more spending power than Indians. And so they publish a cheap version with poor binding and poor paper. And they'll sell it in the Indian subcontinent. Sometimes it'll make it as far as Australia. Sometimes we get people shipping books from Australia who are selling Indian editions. And those books are poor condition to start with and fall apart easily and are, depending on your definition of counterfeit, technically counterfeit, because they're not supposed to be sold on the US market. That being said, Amazon has started to allow them to have seller pages on Amazon. They're not always disclosed as international editions, but you can tell because the ASIN starts with a 9 or an 8 usually.
I've got a couple.
Right. And they're fine to buy and sell, but in the past, Amazon has done like purges of those listings where they just wipe them all off, and then you have a bunch of stranded inventory. I haven't seen that happen for a couple of years now. So I think there must have been some sort of landmark case that allows those to be sold in the US now. The difficulty is with the counterfeit books is it's very easy to see a bad counterfeit book because they've got, first of all, the very poor bindings, poor printing. Books like, where was that book? So authentic books, especially the popular ones, will often have stuff on the flyleaf. Like this is the cover.
Yeah.
This is the cover. So it's got stuff printed on it, which a counterfeit will never have.
Right.
But on the other hand, you get legitimate books that are in their like 10th printing that just really don't have the quality that you would expect in a book. And so that's kind of just a judgment call, just based on seeing a bunch of different books. One thing I will mention is there's a book called the DSM-V.
Yeah.
Do not ever buy and sell this book. As far as I'm concerned, there are no legitimate copies in existence.
No.
It comes in like 4 different shades of purple. It can be this thick or it can be this thick. Like, there may be a legitimate copy out there, but I'm not sure that I would recognize it if I got one. So
yeah, that's a big avoid. But I don't know anyone other than people who've been selling on Amazon for years who are actually allowed to sell that book anyway. So
right, Amazon did a good job of gating the newbies out of almost everything they could get into trouble with, because counterfeiters want to see a lot of sales velocity, high demand, because it's still fairly expensive to print books. So they the newbies will be gated out of almost everything they can get in trouble with. But there are things like, we work with a guy who does consignment sales. He's got a 10-year-old Amazon account, and he's not gated out of hardly anything. And we work really hard to make sure that the stuff that he takes on for other people isn't put in the potential counterfeit category, because, you know, he's basically trusting that they're sending him legitimate books. So that could potentially be a problem down the road. And in case you guys haven't been in the know for a while, there is a couple of legal firms who do test buys, blind buys of books on Amazon to try and see whether or not people are passing off counterfeits. So one
of them's called O&Z, right? Is it O&Z, and they're based in Maryland, so people get really worried when they get an order from Maryland.
Right. There's one in Maryland and there's one in Washington, and I believe they change their buyer name fairly frequently, so I don't really keep up on it.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing, is we just try to make sure that they all look legitimate. And like sometimes, I guess I don't have anything with a ton of stickers, but like this one's got this used sticker.
Yeah.
And that means that's a popular buyback site uses those types of stickers. And if they've been through a buyback site like multiple times, we're like, look, they passed it. So so we don't really see it as, it's more the suspiciously new looking ones that we really are concerned about. So that's another reason to stay away from like new, is like new is often code for counterfeit. And actually there was a thread in your Facebook group a couple of days ago of a guy being like, this book looks legit, but it says it's paperback and it should be a hardcover. And the photo showed that it was shrink wrapped. And shrink wrap is a big red flag for me.
Yeah.
Because the bindings are typically so poor that they shrink wrap them just so that they hold together for the very first trip that they take. So
avoid shrink wraps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to do that.
Yeah, and the only thing you want to see shrink wrapped is the loose leaves, and typically their shrink wrap sucks anyway, so we just rebag them into poly bags. It's not a big deal.
Right. Okay. One of the questions is from Ben is, how do we deal with instructor's editions? And all I do is, if I haven't paid very much for the book, I will just ask Shanna and the team to throw it away, or you can just return it, because you guys offer returns right for a fee. So that's how you deal with instructors. And then the same with counterfeits, you guys will take note of it, and then I'll just return it if it's.
When we receive something on your spreadsheet that we don't think you should sell, we'll mark it in red. So there's a difference, though, is that if you receive an acceptable and you expected a good, we'll just mark it as acceptable. And it's up to you if you really want to take the time to return that. We don't typically recommend it, just because it makes it so that you're spending all of your time chasing up refunds. I don't think it's a good use of time. But if it's particularly bad condition, then we'll mark it acceptable and red. And that's how we tell you, like, don't sell this book. And sometimes we might take it a little bit far and just refuse to ship something that we think we should sell. I actually got a guy tearing me a new one last week via email because I refused to ship 2 books that didn't match the listing. And he was so mad at me. And I was like, you want me to send books that don't match the listing into Amazon and potentially get your account banned? All right, put that in writing and I absolutely will. And all of a sudden, he really wasn't interested in shipping those books anymore.
Wow. Some people, you're just trying to help some people out, and then...
I get that it's kind of a little paternalistic. That was my big problem when I was researching prep centers prior to this, is I didn't feel that prep centers were necessarily taking the steps that I would take with regards to my inventory to make sure that everything was on the up and up and in good condition and everything like that. So I used to, like, my husband and I got into this business 10 years ago now. Wow. 10 years ago now.
Wow.
Selling books from library sales and stuff like that. And eventually I was looking into expanding and tried different prep centers, which back in the day really didn't do books. And I was concerned with how they were grading the books for us, and never really got good answers. They weren't specialized in books. They basically took for granted that whatever I received was like what I should list it for. And I was just very, very dissatisfied with this. So eventually, this is my origin story. I hope you'll bear with me. Eventually, I was just like, you know what? We're awesome at shipping, and I could really take or leave the buying and selling part of it. So I noticed that all of the Amazon sellers I knew had a bunch of crap in their house that they never shipped to Amazon. And so I was like, this really bothered me.
Yeah.
I'm like one of those people who come in and organize your closet. So, so finally I was just like, give me Amazon like access and I will ship it for you. And it just grew from there. And we found that specializing in books, because we had already got all that experience with books, was a no-brainer, because like nobody else was doing it, in my opinion, how it ought to be done. Because it's difficult to train people on the judgment calls. Like with new items, there's no judgment call. It's new or it's not new. But with books, like there's a training process, and like we'll have people who work for us for like 3 months before they're really allowed to grade books unsupervised. So anyways, that's why we specialize in books. And we obviously do everything, but like we can say we specialize in books just because few other people do it with that level of specialization. They tend to just treat it as if it's like, as if it's just like any other item, and it's really, really not.
Yeah, you've definitely found a gap in the market for that, because you hear a lot of horror stories in terms of booksellers and prep centers, and I'm quite fortunate that I haven't had to experience that at all, really. But,
yeah, there are horror stories. Fewer than you would think, though, but they definitely exist.
Yeah, I mean, you hear about just the whole of people's inventories just going up in smoke, and them emailing the prep center and not hearing back, and then
right. Yeah, it's a big trust issue. I feel bad for people, because like if you get busy and you go dark for a number of days, then people send more emails, and then they're more nervous, and it causes a whole snowball effect, because you could barely handle all the email you got before. So we try to automate things so that, like, what we do is we prioritize. So there's a triage system in Warehouse that you guys should be familiar with. The first is check-ins and shipments. So that can be in flux, which one goes first, basically due to the fact of floor space. Like sometimes we have to do all of the check-ins because we don't have the floor space to box anything up. And sometimes we can't do the check-ins because we don't have enough room to like spread them out and sort them. But regardless, those go, if you send a create shipment email, that goes straight into the warehouse queue. And as long as there aren't any problems with your account, like that gets handled completely hands off. Like you don't have to like have anybody touch it. But if you have a thing like, where's this book, or why is my inventory stranded, or something like that, you might wait a week before we kind of get down to that. level of troubleshooting. And then in the midstream is like the hey, I need to do this return. The person I bought it from wants a photo of this so-called damage or whatever. And so we try to get to those in like 2 to 3 days. But like always the priority is the movement of goods. And so we triage that as quickly as possible. In, out, and then the other stuff fits in around the edges.
Nice, great. So I think we've covered quite a lot here. I'm thinking we've looked at returns, talked about listing. I think Ben's asked again what the process is. I just want to quickly say that. So Ben, for example, I'll buy the book, then I'll send it to Central Virginia Prep. Then because I pay for listing, they will grade it, list it, put it on the spreadsheet, and then they'll send it into Amazon when I've got enough books in, and then they'll list it at $199.99 because it's rare that you sell a book for more than that. And then when it becomes active in Amazon, then I will go in and reprice it. So that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. In terms of, is there anything else you wanted to go over? I've done costs and the process. I might mention sales tax actually, because people get hung up on, some people want to use a prep service that it's in a sales tax free state, but I always tell people that it doesn't matter. You just need to get a reseller license in the state that your prep service is at, and then you need to get eBay and Amazon and the sites that you buy from to validate your reseller license, and then they'll take the sales tax off your purchases. A lot of people don't know that, so I just wanted to go over that. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on that you get a lot of queries about? Or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know about the resellers thing. I always tell people, like, I know that the reseller thing will work on Amazon. I didn't know that it worked on eBay, so that's cool to hear.
Yeah, you can do it on A-books as well, but you have to send them a snail mail, and then you can do it on a Libris as well.
Oh,
you can do it on all of them, I think. You just have to email their customer support. Yeah.
Right. Oh, awesome.
Probably write a post about it. And
a lot of people ask me about listing services.
Okay.
Sorry, I said a lot of people ask me about listing services to use. And I know that you have a really good system set up, but I would just like to cover the fact that ScanLister is, in my opinion, the best listing service for book people. And if you plan to always be a book person, ScanLister is a one-time fee, and the guy who runs it, Nathan, is really great and fast with his customer support. And then you can pair that with tracking or accounting inventory spreadsheet from Caleb Roth. The Book Flipper is his website, which is pretty much, and that's also a one-time fee. And those two things are pretty much all you need to run an Amazon book business in terms of like the listing and accounting side of things. But if you ever plan to branch out into non-book items, especially other types of OA where you're sourcing at different prices, I would get involved in a service like AccelerList, or I can't remember what the other one is. AccelerList is always the one that sticks to my brain. And learn that software, because like Seller Central, Oh, you froze up.
Okay.
AccelerList is a big learning curve, kind of like Seller Central. But if you learn it early on in your career and you get all of your accounting plugged into that, then you've got this one unified system that helps you, especially with your restocks, which is less of a thing with books, right? Because you can't always guarantee that you're going to get the price that you need in order to restock the books. Whereas if you're doing wholesale, then or even OA, like, you're more likely to try and restock. So that would be my advice, would be to pick a system that hopefully matches your future plans, and get really proficient in them, because these are the tools that you're going to rely on. The two services for straight up book people are ScanLister, and an unnamed spreadsheet from Caleb Roth, the book flipper. I think it's just called the tracking spreadsheet.
Tracking spreadsheet, yeah.
He needs a better name.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to branch out outside of books, AccelerList is like an all-in-one software that does listing, inventory management, and accounting all in one place. And so it's a very robust tool, but it costs like $100 a month. So it's kind of a commitment. And you use it for the entire time that you sell on Amazon. So it's very much like, this is what I'm doing sort of decision.
So ScanLister is cloud-based, one-time fee?
It is not cloud-based. It is based.
Oh, okay, cool.
But it hooks directly into your Amazon account, and we would love to use it for listing. But unfortunately, Nathan will not make a multi-user license for me.
Okay.
But it's really nice for listing. It's got a pretty robust sort of like, it even imports the Keepa graph if you were the type of person who were like, I'm not sure. I saw RVA listed here, so that's Richmond, Virginia. So if you were the type of person who could list or who could source locally, you could use ScanLister as a one-stop like list, scan, and research and list at the same time. So that's quite helpful. But for all you overseas people, you're kind of SOL.
Yeah, Adam has asked why ScanLister or AccelerList preferred over Inventory Lab.
Inventory Lab. That is, that's the other one. AccelerList and Inventory Lab perform pretty much the same function.
Okay.
ScanLister is more of a book listing function that can be used for other types of inventory, but it lacks the built-in inventory management and accounting software that AccelerList and Inventory Lab.
Oh, so they're like a one-stop shop. You can do everything with those.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing when you're. Sorry, I also geek out about business software. So like that's kind of the thing is that like when you're drilling down into your restock reports and stuff like that, like it's very helpful to have that all integrated, because it's a nightmare to get different software programs to like talk to each other. I feel like I spend all my time troubleshooting Zapier for my own business. So yeah, that's that. If you're for straight up books, ScanLister is like was designed by a bookseller. Nathan Holmquist is also like got a 15-year-old Amazon account.
Right.
But AccelerList is much more robust, but you pay for it. And same with Inventory Lab, but you pay for it. So it's one of those things where if you're prepared to really dig into this and expand into various niches, then that's where you should go and get really proficient in it.
Yeah, it's totally worth the monthly cost because staying on top of your numbers is super important. And going back to the tracking spreadsheet, that's a one-time fee. I think it's $170 at the moment. I think it's 170, but it's so worth that because before I used that, I was all over the place, and it's worth its weight in gold. That
people don't know their numbers. I think that's really
criminal.
They have so much fun buying the books and like they see the repricing as a necessary evil. But when it comes to doing the accounting, I don't see a lot of people who really dig into that, and that's really the difference between the people who are extremely successful and the people who are just kind of having fun at a side gig. I can't tell you how many people are like, I'm not really sure if I'm making money at this business. And I'm like, what are you even doing here, buddy?
Yeah, totally agree.
Like you might lose money for 6 months, a little bit of money, but like, after 6 months, you should really be digging into like where you're making money and like revising your buys based on how you're doing.
Yeah, otherwise you're kind of spinning your wheels, wasting your time.
Yeah,
that's a story for another day, I think. I think we've probably gone over everything. I guess the one last one maybe we haven't touched on is trade-ins and buybacks.
So I think a lot of people hype trade-ins because it's easy, like it's fast money. The turnover is
it's pure profit, really, isn't it? You don't have to wait for
But I do think that it is more trouble than it's worth due to the fact that first of all, a lot of the best trades are ones that new sellers are gated out of. So if they reject your trade because of condition or they think it's counterfeit, first of all, if they decide it's counterfeit, and I'm not really 100% sure about their grading techniques there, because I certainly don't see a problem with these books. If they decide it's counterfeit, they seize it and they ship it to said lawyers, or at least they say they do. If they don't like the condition, they'll downgrade it, and they seem to be pretty picky about condition, in my opinion.
Yeah, they really are.
And then if you do get it back because you paid the return shipping, like oftentimes the ones that do the best for trading, you're gated out of as a new seller, so you can't even sell it on your own FBA site. So I feel like it's high risk, high reward. It works, for Seth, it works decently well because he's got a lot of levels unlocked in Amazon. And so he can usually FBA whatever he can't trade in. But I do find that a lot of people get really excited about the profit that they're going to make, and then a few trades fall through, and then all of a sudden they're in the hole.
Yeah, I guess for some of the UK audience, they might not even know what this is. So trade-ins and buybacks are essentially where you'll be able to find a book online, so whether it be on Amazon or eBay, that you can actually resell immediately. You can get a quote from a buyback site or a trading site for a profit. So I might be able to buy a book for $20 and immediately get a quote for $40, provided you ship it into them within 7 days, and then you've essentially made $20 profit if they're quoting you $40. And Central Virginia Prep will let you know if the book's come in the condition you expected, and then they'll send it off for a fee. And it used to be a lot better for me. I used to make between, say, $500 and $1,000 profit, and it didn't take me that much work each month to do. But now it's gone down to only a couple of hundred, and I've actually been blocked by a few of the sites because obviously I'm sending too much in. So if you can't scale it, it's risky. A lot of sites will say your book's counterfeit, and then they won't even send it back sometimes. Like you said, a publisher it'll be sent to a publisher. So I would just be quite tentative with the buybacks. It's not really something that's worth pursuing. You should focus more on your FBA business, really, unless you can find some of the flips are a bit crazy. I do find some where I can buy for $10 and sell for like $60 and $70. So those are the ones that I do the choice ones now. But generally, I try to not focus my time on it because it's not scalable, so it's not much point. But I thought I'd touch on it anyway, just to make people aware of what it is and that you offer the service.
Yeah, I said I do get that question a lot. Thank you, because Peter Valley has a hype beast for a trade-in flipping machine. But I will say, like you mentioned in one of your Facebook posts, that books are a great stepping stone into the Amazon ecosystem, and I tend to agree, because like unlike OA and especially like wholesale and private label, it's so the turnover is really fast, the risk pool is highly diversified, and you get to see an ROI like fairly quickly, and that's pretty much the best you could ask for a new entrepreneurial gig. Like you're iterating, as the tech people like to say. And the trade-ins are attractive because it looks like you can make easy money faster. And that's kind of the problem, is like it doesn't get much faster than selling used books FBA. And it doesn't get much easier than selling used book FBA without a commensurate leap in risk. So I really think that used books are a very nice sweet spot for people to get started, get their toes wet, learn the ropes of Amazon, and then if they want to diversify into something else. So
yeah, totally agree. I think if I hadn't had so much success with it and enjoyed it so much, I probably would have moved into wholesale or something else, but it didn't really seem necessary at the moment. But you never know whether I might move into that anyway. As you say, it's the easiest one to get to, lowest bar to entry, and the fact that you guys offer this sort of service makes it a no-brainer to get started in, really.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will find this useful. We should probably wrap it up there. I think we've been going for almost an hour and 20. It's quite a good effort. I'll post this video up, and I'll put links to all the things we mentioned and your site, because you've got some really good blog articles that people can refer to if they didn't want to watch all this the whole way through. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No,
Lasting
that's
comments?
everything. I will say that because it's Q4 and we're shipping a ton of volume, it'll probably take, if you try to sign up right now, it'll probably take a week before everything is done, because the email volume is crazy right now, and we're just going to prioritize existing customers. Sorry.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Either way, you'll get back to them, and yeah, so we'll post the links, and I'll let you get on with your day. Have a great Sunday. Thanks for coming on. Hopefully we'll do maybe a round 2 next year.
Awesome.
I'm sure people will appreciate that. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and I'll chat to you soon.
All right. We'll see you later.
See you.